the inside story on the issues that affect you and your community. This is Local 12 Newsmakers.
Good morning and welcome to Local 12 Newsmakers. Metropolitan Cincinnati is governmentally fragmented into hundreds of government units. In Hamilton County alone, 49 cities, villages, and townships, as well as 22 school districts, all with their own elected officials and administrations, divide decision-making responsibilities. Although people love to say they favor running government in a business-like manner, every effort over the last 60 years to rationalize the structure of local government has met fierce resistance. In the face of that intransigence, the alternative is to seek meaningful collaboration and cooperation between governmental units. This past week, the Northern Kentucky Area Development District, the Northern Kentucky Chamber of Commerce, and Vision 2015 released a report on government collaboration entitled Connecting Communities. To discuss this report, I am joined this morning by John Mays, the Executive Director of the Northern Kentucky Area Development District, which is a multi-county planning and development agency, and Steve Stevens, the President of the Northern Kentucky Chamber of Commerce. Welcome to Newsmakers. Steve, welcome back.
Thanks, Dan.
Let's get clear right from the beginning here, the region that we're talking about. We have a map that's in the report, and because sometimes, you know, for our total broad viewing public, when they think of Northern Kentucky, they think of the three northern counties, but it's more than that. So let's put the map up, and John, talk about the expanse of what you were looking at here.
Yes, the map that you see is the Area Development District, but it's also a region used by a lot of other organizations. So it not only includes Boone, Kenton, and Campbell, it includes 5 rural counties that lie just to the south. So that's Carroll and Owen, Grant, Pendleton, and Gallatin. And so that's the area that we'll talk about here in just a minute that we solicited examples of cooperation from.
And as you go through the report, there are a lot of examples. There's a lot of activity in terms of collaboration, cooperation out in those rural districts. It's not just up in the three counties that we talk about all the time here on Channel 12.
Exactly. It incorporates a lot of rural examples, urban, and some of them go across those lines too, and some of them go across lines even into Cincinnati.
Well, the water system, which isn't really referenced here, I don't think, but
yes, it is.
Is it into
yes.
Boone County?
Yes.
Okay, I missed that because it's one of my favorites. Steve, what was the process here? What were you trying to do and take a look at?
Well, you know, as a chamber, we have promoted and encouraged government efficiency for many, many years, and we talk about specific things we'd like to see improved, but we sort of had a sense that there were things that had been going on for the last 15 years, and so we thought, well, maybe it's time to sort of take inventory of that, know what the successes have been, also what has sort of been barriers to those things that we may have attempted over those years and not accomplished, and maybe it's time to take a look at them again. What we found, we were very pleased because just in the report you held up a minute ago, there are about 40 examples, and those aren't all that were discovered among the communities, cities and counties, cooperating, collaborating, joint purchasing, whatever, which really gave us a starting point. But there are opportunities still for us to go forward with some other things.
I want to take a look both at some of what's been accomplished and also some of those opportunities that are still out there. One of the areas is on fire, police, EMS, all those services, and there have been some collaborative agreements in this area. This is such a basic service of local government. How would you evaluate what's happened and what needs to happen here, John?
Well, what's going on is we're slowly seeing examples where fire departments, other public safety units are coming together to engage in a whole range of different kinds of relationships. You could merge, and usually that's not what happens. Usually it's a cooperative agreement, but it's not everybody just being by themselves. Everybody's looking out to see what can I do to improve services to our clients, to our constituents, to our citizens. If I can cooperate with somebody else, collaborate with somebody else, or merge, what can we do to do that? And we're seeing that more and more in public safety because they're so under pressure because of budget. So it's being driven, I think, by a lot of different things, but we'd like to think it's being driven by what is the best thing we can do for our constituents.
Well, when you think just about fire by itself, I mean, that involves because response time controls people's insurance rates, so having stations placed, but when you have fragmented departments, you can have stations that are very close to each other, but they're in different districts, and then you have to, who buys what equipment? That equipment is expensive out there. Those fire trucks do not come inexpensively. Yeah. And it seems like, yes, there's a lot of collaboration and cooperation, but it seems like there's still a lot of low-hanging fruit that might be generated here in this area.
Well, I think there are some real opportunities still for us to take on, and we can get into greater detail on those in a minute, but truly we talked to those local officials as we went through and found out what they had done and said, well, what do you think we still could do? And it was out of their mouths collectively that we really started seeing some things that were consistent.
One of the things that caught my eye was the consolidation in the 3 northern counties of the 911 system.
Yes.
Or
yes.
movement towards that. And what comes through in your report is that there's a 911 system in Campbell, 911 system in Boone, and 3 911 systems in Kenton County.
That's correct.
Is that an area that...
Well, that's certainly one that we want to look at because, you know, we have 5. It would be more efficient just to even go down to 3, 1 in each county. Ideally, if someday we could have 1 for all 3 northernmost counties, I think that would be terrific. But, you know, maybe the first place to go is to try to make sure that we can have 1 in each county.
Now, one of the issues when you're doing that sort of thing, it's not just, oh, well, get everybody together in it, because it sometimes involves purchasing new equipment so that everybody has the same equipment and can communicate with each other in the same way. And if you're going to do that, then you want to buy the right equipment. So there's some upfront costs that may be involved for long-term savings. Is that right, John?
It's both. You're examining and researching what's going to happen in the first year or 2, and then what happens in the long run. And for instance, at the Area Development District, one of the things and one of the services we provide to our constituents is to actually do some of those studies, and it's usually very low cost or it's free. But that's exactly what it is. You've got to determine your budget because the budget speaks to what you can really do.
On the administrative finance side, one of the things that is on the recommendation side, and there are a lot, people can go in, this is on the web, by the way, and you can find it through your website or the Chamber's website. It's very easy to get. But one of the recommendations I found really interesting here was the proposal that jurisdictions cooperate on the occupational license tax. Can you explain both in terms of its structure but also in its collection? Steve, what is that? Why is that there? This is an important tax to the local government.
It is, because it represents usually the highest or the second largest place they get revenue for themselves, and so it is important, and so making sure that's treated fairly. We believe that if it would be made easier to collect those, actually the local governments would see the receipts increase, because we have seen that in other things. And in Kenton County, we have made some progress to consolidate occupational license tax collection, where the county actually collects it for some of the jurisdictions. But, you know, if we could do it across all 3 northern Kentucky counties, particularly, we think of ourselves as one community. We want business to come here thinking about one community, very much like in Cincinnati, and if we had one location, one process to go through, rather than I've spent some time in this community, I've spent some time in this community, I've got to allocate taxes based on the amount of time I spent in each of those communities working, that's cumbersome. That's unattractive as a business. That makes us somewhat uncompetitive when we look at ourselves versus other communities.
Strikes me that one of the elements behind that recommendation, John, is that you have these different municipalities that have different rates right now. I mean, centralizing the collection might or might not be a particular problematic, but this also involves making the rate consistent and then determining how the taxes that are come in, the revenue, gets distributed from some central point. All of a sudden, a local community is giving up some control. This is the sort of tough decision when you're talking about tax revenue. There isn't much tougher decision that's involved.
No, there isn't. That's the heart of the matter, and that's why it's going to be an evolving process. Each jurisdiction is going to have to sit down and decide what they can do and commit to. But what we're seeing is this slow evolution where more and more people are deciding that, there's some advantages to this. Now, again, they're not going to give up everything, and I don't expect them to. And probably even in some cases they shouldn't. Democracy's out there, local responsiveness, there'd be a big difference trying to go to a very large council versus a small council. So each jurisdiction is going to contribute something, but they're going to have to say, I need to be responsive to my constituents.
Around this proposal, I think I hear echoes of what happened in Louisville, Jefferson County, where there was, before the merger of the cities and the counties, there was an agreement that I think went for 12 years about how to collect and share tax revenues. And they were actually, so money was on the table, and they got used to working with each other that way. Is there an echo here of that?
I think that's quite possible, and you look around usually for best practices when you start thinking about things like this. The Ad District does a good job of evaluating other communities and their partners and neighbors. I think we see some good examples like that. It works, and I think cities now, looking at their counterparts, have seen some real benefits. Savings, obviously, streamlining staff, because you don't need all those folks that are out there counting and accounting the taxes that are collected and so forth, but also just making the whole licensure process, bringing it into one computerized system. And really what it takes is we have to have some interlocal agreements between governments across northern Kentucky and some willingness. So we have to kind of sell it city by city, community by community, and hopefully they'll see that.
Well, I'm going to pick up on something Steve just said, but toss it to you, John. He said we have to sell it. Who's the we? Where's the leadership come for bringing about getting people to the table, putting the questions on the table, keeping people at the table? Where's the leadership going to come for this sort of thing?
Leadership is going to come from all kinds of places. For instance, this study here was a cooperative effort by 3 organizations, Vision 2015,
right,
the Chamber, and the Area Development District. In other cases, you're going to have, say, 3 or 4 or 5 of the county judge executives get together and say, we're going to do this, or take a look at this. It's going to come from 2 cities cooperating and everybody else finding out about it. So it's not going to come from one source. It's going to come from, the we is really we. It's everybody. It's going to be here. It's going to be there. It's not going to be some monumental, one source thing.
In northern Kentucky, thinking about north of the river viewers at the moment, judge executives are really critical. We don't have that position in Ohio. The 3 judge executives you got in the northern counties, pretty shrewd people, pretty savvy. What's the backing? What's the views of those people, those point people? Steve?
Oh, I would say they are looking for efficiencies too. They are looking at their budgets just like smaller communities are looking at their budgets. And they've been collecting these taxes too, and we are looking for ways to cooperate so that we can all reduce. And ultimately, I'll go back to what I said earlier. What is the incentive? Well, the incentive is cost reduction, but it's also increased revenue. We clearly have seen that revenue can increase for local communities if it is made easier. Business people will look for the path of least resistance, and if it's difficult, they'll find probably some ways to avoid those taxes. So if we make it very easy, our sense is in talking to businesses, they're very willing to comply as long as it's made easy. So we think there's incentive for them to come to the table.
Some of these things that are cited in the report seem almost no-brainers on one level, like in the shared utilities, wastewater treatment and whatever. That's actually complicated, but I think I was noticing that there was joint use of broom trucks across a number of cities. Those sort of specialized pieces of equipment. You would think the approach there would be not just between 2, but as many as possible. Once you got a specialized piece of equipment like that, keep that thing going every day and just travel it around. I mean, why does everybody need their own? And that gets sort of back to the fire equipment as well and lots of other things. But it just seems to me there's so much logic built into this if you can just get it going.
There is, and a good example is the Boone Water Rescue. They do that for everybody else, and they're very highly skilled. They put a lot of resources into that, but everybody else supports that. So they're the ones that you call for that kind of situation. And of course, at this time of year, imagine what that entails. And it was like a body recovery down at Warsaw. That's one of our rural counties, but everybody was down there the other day. I was down there and there must have been 30 or 40 of those people on the riverfront engaged in that exercise of recovery, but they were all there.
One final thing, you were talking about looking at best practices. In the state of Kentucky, you've got Louisville, which is city county. You've got Lexington, Fayette County are merged. In your community in northern Kentucky, is there a lot of saying, ooh, look what Louisville's doing, look what Lexington is doing? Are they models that are being held up as well? Are people intrigued by that?
They are, and they always look to see what challenges they were faced with that they could overcome. I would also just throw in the fact that they're a little ahead of us in building a big bridge, which we need.
Yeah.
And the whole process to go to the public and to gain that local support is something this community is watching very closely, because we want to learn from their successes and from their failures and mistakes as they go through it. So I do think we look there. We're used to having people look at us though too, because they've often come here asking how we do cooperation and collaboration, because over the years, I have to say, this community has done a really nice job of it, and it's evidenced in this report, because it was even greater than I think my expectations had been, John, that we found so many good examples.
So once again, the report is called Connecting Communities. You can find it on the website of either the Chamber or the Development District, Area Development District.
Yes.
And certainly worth reading. As a person who's long been interested in this issue, I will continue to follow this, because we got to keep pressing on this collaboration and cooperation. Thank you for being here this morning. Stay tuned. After the break, a local agency prepares to mark more than a century of service. Welcome back. For a not-for-profit to survive for 140 years, the organization must not only be nimble in terms of structure and programming, but in its ability to reinterpret its mission across radically different changes in society. When the Emanuel Community Center was founded in 1871 in Over the Rhine, the focus was on services to recent German immigrants to Cincinnati who needed to learn English and acclimate to American life. In 1900, Emanuel opened what is now the oldest licensed daycare center in Ohio. Today, it is part of the Step Up to Quality program to lift centers above the state minimum standards. Over the years, the center has also sponsored athletic programs for young people, and today has a computer lab, arts and cultural programming, and serves as a community connector on public issues facing Over the Rhine. I am joined now by Russ Naber, the chair of the Board of Trustees of Emanuel Community Center, and Colin Groth, the vice chair of the center. Colin works for SORTA, and you live in Over the Rhine, right?
I do.
Very good. Well, welcome to Newsmakers.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Russ, at this point, how would you describe the function, the role of Emanuel Community Center?
Well, we consider ourselves to be a community connector, and our commitment is really to build a great neighborhood in the revitalization that's already underway in Over the Rhine. And we believe great neighborhoods require more than just renovation of brick and mortar, but really bringing the neighbors together to get to know each other. So we want to offer programming that allows the residents that are really very diverse in socioeconomic backgrounds to come together in common interests. So we have things like the Oprah Book Club. We have offered free programs from Playhouse in the Park, Rikki Tikki Tavi, for families to come together. We have jazzercise programs that people from across the neighborhood can all join together.
Gee, I wonder who that's done by. A longtime mutual friend, Kelly Leon, who actually created Newsmakers many, many years ago, does that.
And Kelly is very active, as you know, in the community and in Emanuel. And it's a great really example of what can be done, because she has people that come from outside the Over the Rhine neighborhood. She has residents. She has members of Tender Mercy. So it really is a great way, because what we believe is that while people are very different maybe in backgrounds, our interests are actually very similar. And so you can have a very mixed economic group coming together and enjoying things. And we have great facility to house it in.
Colin, as a young professional resident, how did you sort of end up at Emanuel? Is it a force in the neighborhood that people just know about? It's that much out there?
I mean, it's such a big part of the community. I actually live on Republic Street, about a half a block from Emanuel. So, by proximity alone, I had a great idea of where it was. And really, Emanuel has sat on the eastern edge of Washington Park for the better part of 90 years. So with a lot of the work that's been done in the neighborhood and the priority placed on Washington Park, a $47 million redevelopment underway, we're really, primed to become an even bigger part of the community. And we've got a great history. You mentioned the athletic programs. Individuals like Aaron Pryor and Ezra Charles have come through our facility. Now we're looking to sort of reestablish ourselves as a force to bring new and old residents through common programming, common experiences, and make everyone feel welcome.
Now, on those public issues like the park, the redesign of Washington Park, what's the role of the center in that?
Well, we really are partnering with really a lot of the leaders in the neighborhood. We, for example, house regular meetings, Washington Park Advisory Board, that can discuss some of the issues that may come up during the construction. We were asked by 3CDC during design phase to bring together members of parents from our early learning center neighborhood to help give input to the architects around what should the playground look like. And so we play a very, I think, active role in it, and the beauty of it, it's going to be our front yard. As we look out, we oversee the park, and it's just going to be a wonderful place, not only for Over Rhine, but I think for everybody in Cincinnati to really enjoy.
And building on that, we actually partnered with a creative agency in Over the Rhine and launched a website where we could do some crowdsourcing to get feedback for 3CDC on some of the design elements and really try to bring more voices to the table.
Another very specific thing, and it's not one of the grand things about design and planning that I love, is the Future Galileos program in cooperation with the Cincinnati Observatory, which people from there's somebody from the observatory here about 2 months ago. And Colin, just talk about that.
Well, we've been able to partner with the observatory. They were able to donate telescopes and really help us to create a program that gives people that, urban kids that may not have an opportunity to have experiences like that in a normal setting, going out to more suburban locales. We can bring that into an urban core and provide kind of a different experience than what you might expect at a community center downtown.
So these telescopes, there's 60 of them, right? So kids can, that's a lot. I mean, that's it's wonderful.
It has a big impact, but
it is
for
beautiful.
that organization, it may not be a huge monetary resource gift, but it has a huge impact on the lives of these kids.
Oh, yeah.
And they'll remember that for a lifetime. And that's really what Emanuel's all about.
And how long have you been connected to Emanuel?
I'm going into my 4th year.
Okay.
So I joined the board in 2008.
Now, one of the things we're going to talk about is the Torch Awards. And as all not-for-profits, you raise money by doing major events, right? And this is coming up. You want to talk about it just a little bit?
It's actually the Triumph Awards.
The Triumph
It'll be on
Awards.
February 2nd at the Cincinnati Netherland Hilton in the Hall of Mirrors. It is an event that is a key fundraiser for the center. It allows us to really make our programming accessible for all residents of Over the Rhine. And we're going to honor 3 people in Cincinnati: Ellen Vanderhorst from the Chamber, Herb Brown, retired from Western Southern and a longtime volunteer in the community, and Pavel Yarvi from the Symphony, who is the outgoing music director. It's a great event to honor people who have made significant contribution in professional life and their volunteer life for the community. And it'll be at 6 o'clock.
Well, let's take a quick look. We've got a full screen so people know how to find out more information about that. And if you want to, you can check the website, www.emanuelcenter.org, or make a call to 241-2563, extension 32, ask for Gail, and you can find out all about that. And if people don't know who Herb Brown is, I mean, Herb has been a force in this community forever, and somebody that's just amazing. So anyway.
And a wonderful little example of connections, Herb actually volunteered in 1961, I think, at Emanuel Center in the boxing program. He was actually a boxer in his younger days, and he helped coach Aaron Pryor and others.
Believe me, I'll use that in the future when I have them on here. Thank you for being here.
Well,
thank you
you
for the work in the community, and thank you for making Newsmakers a part of your Sunday morning. Join us again next week to meet the men and the women who shape our community for the future. Have a good week.